Well, hello and welcome back. We're on for another episode of the StoneX Australian Cattle and Beef Market Report. My name is Ripley Atkinson. I'm the Australian Livestock and Commodities Manager for StoneX based in Sydney, where we're developing price risk management tools for the Australian livestock industry to help the sector manage market and price volatility with our Australian feeder cattle swap. We're brought to you by StoneX Group, a Nasdaq-listed global financial services network with 100 years of experience in global commodity markets. Remember that the trading of derivatives such as futures, options and over-the-counter products or swaps may not be suitable for all investors. Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss, and you should fully understand the risks prior to trading. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future results. Today, fortunate to have on the podcast Tim Clay from Dunmore Pastoral. Tim, great to have you on, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rip. You're currently saving me from the windy weather outside, so appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for having me on. Hopefully I can provide some useful insights for your listeners.
Mate, awesome. It's pretty ordinary here in Sydney at the minute too, so pleased to be inside. I thought a few listeners had gotten on to me in the last couple of weeks, wanting to hear views from a producer, particularly with the way the market is at the minute and how it's gone, over the last, 2-3 months. But be interested on your views, season, market, how this year's gone for you, if you've done anything different strategically in a sales sense or an operational sense, and then, your views on looking forwards and what that sort of means on the outlook for you guys in where you operate in the industry in general. But to kick us off, give us a bit of an introduction about yourself, Dunmore Pastoral, and the business.
Yeah, so we're just a family-run business located in Southern Queensland. We've got two properties located between Moonee and Cecil Plains, and a third one out at Westmar. We also lease a couple of paddocks off the neighbours at Cecil Plains here at Dunmore. About 26,000 acres all up. 3,500 acres of cropping country, all fodder cropped. We mainly focus on backgrounding steers for heavy feeder market. All our cattle go into Morton Co, Grassdale Feedlot and Pine Grove. So that's basically our operation. We do opportunity hay and those type of enterprises when they suit, but they're not our main game. So yeah, that's where we're at. There's just myself, my wife, mum, dad, and my sister and her husband, and we employed one outside labour unit, and we get a bit of contracting done to fill the gaps. So that's the whole show basically.
Small team and a bit to get through, keep you busy.
Yeah, no, always busy. These farms are never finished. So if you're not doing something, you're not looking hard enough. So no, always on our toes.
And you mentioned, you traditionally focused on the backgrounding of cattle for the heavy feeder market. Has that always been the case?
Not always. We probably about 5 years ago went from a more straight breeding operation. That was largely driven by that last drought we had. So in 2018, we probably had close to 1,000 cows. And everyone knows what happened in 2019. So it was pretty rough. And basically, we came to the point with our cow herd, we wanted to run the number of cows we could handle in a 2019 scenario. So the number we've come up with is about 600, and then the remainder of the country is all background of steers and a few heifers as well, but mainly background of steers, and there's about 2,500 of them running around at the moment. So if we have another 2019 type scenario, we just keep peeling off our steers and we can look after our cows without having to feed them. We've sort of got a rule that we'll never feed an animal, not in a productive sense, again. So there's times where we might production feed steers or supplement them with pellets or something like that, but we'll never feed a cow again. She's got she's got to produce a calf that's low cost, and feeding's just a no-go zone for us, basically.
Yep, yep. Makes sense. And on season, moving forwards, how has this year been for you guys and your two locations in which you operate at?
Yeah, no, it's been pretty perfect, to be honest, Rib. It hasn't been like a 21, 22 period where we had probably got to the point where we had too much rain. Our rolling rainfall at the moment is sitting at about 720 mils here at Dunmore, so that's nearly perfect because it's not anything over 800 mils is probably starting to get too much for our sort of country. The protein and energy in the grass just isn't there
Mm-hmm.
after that point. So we're sitting, yeah, very well, and it's been very even. It's all we actually haven't had a lot of rainwater. Our dams aren't exactly full, but we mainly rely on bores, so that's not a huge issue for us. So yeah, no, it couldn't really be better at this point.
Cool. And you mentioned fodder cropping as a part of your operation, for the backgrounding of those feeders. Oats obviously is incorporated into that. I've spoken to a few people this year. You and I have had the conversation ourselves. How's the oats crop been? I spoke to a few in northern New South Wales and they were quite worried that it was going to cut out. And then that rain started in July and it's really pushed at least another graze or two out of it. How's the oats been this year for you guys?
Yeah, no, that scenario that you just mentioned is exactly what we experienced. We probably were getting through mid-July there, thinking we were set for our numbers for oats, and then from late July into August, we'd probably had, for those two, well, probably just mainly August, we've had double our average rainfall for that month, and that's really crucial this time of the year. So we had another 7.5 mils last night, and 7.5 mils, it doesn't sound a lot, but when you've had a big lot of rain beforehand, we can really start piling the the weight on that forage crop. We're just getting a lot more dry matter production with those little falls. So it's it's been, yeah, no, it's been excellent. But we did go through that period you're talking about, sort of late June into July. We were probably, and I know your commentary, you said that people were starting to say that oats is cutting out, and we weren't cutting out, but we weren't pulling more numbers on. Whereas now we're in a position where we're actually going to have to cut a couple of paddocks of hay because we just cannot physically get enough numbers on those paddocks, mainly because of where the buy-in price for the cattle is at the moment. It's just probably starting to get a bit up there to be pulling more numbers on. We're pretty well stocked, but pulling more numbers on now is probably just not where we feel is the right thing to do.
Yeah, yep. In a strategic sense.
Yeah, that's right. Especially when we've only got about sort of 2.5 months left on the oats. If we had, a full season in front of us, we would probably pull more on.
Mm-hmm.
But you need a certain type of animal to make use of that oats for that short period. And those animals right now, you're paying the same cents a kilo for them as you are a 100 kilo lighter animal, and it's just there's a lot more risk involved in buying that animal. It's getting up to sort of $2,000 a head now.
So are you starting to see your natural unimproved pastures pick up in a grass production sense now that we're the 11th of September? Like, are you starting to see that spring growth kick into gear yet?
Yeah, look, I reckon it's the earliest I've thrown our feed budget out. So when we get our the 50 mils within the growing season, which we usually work on October, anytime after October is the start of our growing season. When we receive 50 mils, that's when we get to throw our feed budget out the window. And usually our feed budget from the previous year goes right through to February, so we're well and truly covered. So I've already sort of done, like, got rid of that feed budget because the growth we're already starting to see early to mid-September is giving me enough of an incentive to reassess my feed situation. So the winter feed that's still sitting there, it's going to stay there, but the new growth with only a few small falls, coming along, it'll really take off. So yeah, no, it's setting up well for a really, really good spring.
Good position to be in, and I think a lot of people north of Dubbo you know, alongside yourself are in the same boat, pretty excited about it, which is pleasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah, it's really good on it. And I know the Victorians are trying to catch up, but they're just having they've had their 2019 last year and well into this year, and now they're hopefully having their 2021 comeback that we had that few years ago too.
Fingers crossed for them, mate. Markets, you and I chat that kind of stuff fairly regularly. If nothing else, give us your thoughts on this year, in a broader sense. I mean, obviously we've seen the last 3 months roughly when the market really started to move, but across the year, how's it gone for you guys? How's it looked? Yeah, give us a bit of your perspective.
Yeah, right. No, to be honest, it's taken us. We probably shouldn't have taken this by surprise this leap because there was a lot of commentary at the end of last year, start of this year that said that feeders were going to go to astronomical prices. They probably haven't got to those what was said then yet, but they're not far off them. So we probably should have taken a bit more notice of that. But it didn't fit. It's just with the sheer numbers that were on the table. It didn't feel like that was probably possible this early. So we were still building numbers. We've been building numbers throughout the whole year, but very slowly and steadily, not rushing into the market too hard. But yeah, I look. I try and talk to 4 or 5 different blokes, you being one of them, a week, and get a sort of consensus view of the market. And it just feels like there's a little bit of euphoria at the moment, and a lot of them are saying that they don't think it's going to pull up yet. So, but I guess in our position where we are fairly well fully stocked, apart from that oats I was talking about earlier, we're pretty lucky because we can just replace what we sell and be not needing to drag on big numbers or anything. But yeah, I don't. There's no reason to think it'll go backwards as long as the season goes with us. Like every year, I suppose, if you got the season with you, the market generally stays pretty strong. But it's definitely gone further than what I would have thought for this time of year.
Yeah, and I'll openly admit I'm the same. I think the fundamentally to me what it goes back to is the strength of the season in Queensland, and probably the other important point is the expansion of the feedlot sector, both in Queensland itself, northern New South Wales, but also those blokes in southern Australia, building pen space, and their willingness to buy your Queensland crossbred. It probably not shocked me, but I wasn't aware as how willing they would be to do it. A 480 price for a feeder at Dalby, delivered, to hay in southern New South Wales, you're looking at sort of 510 to 520, and they've got no worries doing that, buying cattle out of the paddock. And I think it's that added competition and the strength of the season in Queensland allowing you guys to sell as you need. You're not rushed or pressured to get cattle out the door. I think has created that really strong support for it to do what it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. We just purchased replaced. We sent out 9 decks of steers at the start of the week, and we're just in the business of replacing them now. And I bought 4 decks of backgrounders in Dalby yesterday through the agent, and he said he was competing against Victorians for those cattle, and they're not. I would have thought they would only be working on just softer types, Angus and Herefords and that, but they're going into sort of cattle that you wouldn't expect them to, and some different sort of weight ranges and yeah, just they're obviously needing a lot more than people. Well, I suppose it was anticipated, but it's still surprising the type of cattle that they're purchasing. Yeah.
It's been pretty significant. I mean, we saw it at Tamworth in 2020. You've got purebred Brahmins running around the northwest slopes out of the territory. So it's obviously possible, but you wouldn't think you see many crossbred cattle in, Ballarat and Victoria. But stranger things have happened.
That's right. Yeah. No, it's I suppose it just comes back to, and you hear people talk about it. It's Australia's a big paddock, and
Hmm.
once it needs filling, you got to get the cattle from somewhere, and if they're not where you want them, you got to go elsewhere for them.
And I suppose a bit like on that, considering the rain that happened in March in terms of its timing across pretty much Queensland and most of New South Wales, have you in your chats that you have with producers and others in the supply chain, has the theme of the producer retaining stock this year to add weight sort of been reoccurring? Like, is that been something that's come up fairly often that you hear that that's the strategy the producer's taking?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, just like speaking from our point of view, especially when the buy-in price was quite, I wouldn't call low, but it was quite favourable. And if you got feed there, if you're not using that feed, you're not converting it into money or into beef. So you've got to take it while it's there. And that's what everyone's done. I think there's probably been some that have been a bit late to the party and that are coming online now. And probably just want to get through winter to see what winter threw up. But yeah, it's certainly man, you got to convert grass into money, and that's the bottom line really. And if you got it, you got to do it.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and I think that's been a big theme of this year. But I did run some numbers on buying cattle out of northern New South Wales today. You know, in a hypothetical scenario, and a buy price over $5 and a sell price in the fours, it doesn't take much on that calculator with assumptions, obviously, for that margin to erode fairly quickly. And I did notice that on a cents a kilo rate, it doesn't take much of a drop from a certain price point to a lower one for that margin to not disappear, but it does fall quite sharply. But I think, you
Yeah.
know, like to your point about the buy price getting high, if you've got the grass, you've got to roll with it and stay in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's probably from our point of view, we're probably just starting to pull back a little bit, and we have the luxury of being able to do that because we are nearly fully stocked. So we're not forced in a position to somehow get that grass used, whether that's, doing it yourself or adjusting or, baling, whatever it is. We don't have to worry about that. But on just a pure trade basis, we are actually in a really good position. If you're selling one in, one out, the trade at the moment on those animals is about $1,000 a head, which we usually work on. If we're $500 plus, we're in the black. So $1,000, we're actually doing quite well out of that just at the moment. But on the flip side, we've got to make that $1,000 go a long way because one day we'll be doing it for $300. So
Yeah.
you got to make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah, 100%. And talking, it's a good segue, that comment, mate. You know, we've spoken season, we've spoken markets, operationally or strategically in a sales sense, or, you know, running the business at the production end. Have you done anything different this year to what you usually would, or have things changed over time? Like, I'd be interested to hear on that. You know, you're buying cattle at different weights because the season shifted, or give anything on that.
Yeah, no, we do try and run an assembly line type of business generally with our steers. So we've got an arrangement with Morton Co where we feed those steers in. We've got an agreement with them. So we are basically on assembly line buying in small steers and then producing a heavy feeder, and we have a home for that animal before we even buy it. So generally that's what we do, but we will, if we see the markets going in a certain way, we will react to that too. So in May, based on blokes like yourself and agents and people we talked to, we had a really good hunch that the cows were really undervalued. So I traded out and I would have loved to have bought more in hindsight, but we traded out of steers and we bought a number of cows, and we actually only held those cows for about 6 weeks. They went on the crop that we only probably put 60 kilos on, and then sent them out at, we all saw what the cow market did in that period. It was a very short period that we planned on holding for a lot longer, but we just saw some money in them and went with them. But yeah, we try not to tie ourselves just into one thing all the time. It's good to have that one thing, but if we can react to things like that cow market taking off, when we got a pretty good hunch that it'll happen, and we won't get we can at least get out of them if it doesn't happen. But yeah, from a market's point of view, that's probably the main one. We did go to all winter cropping, forage cropping program this year as well. No summer cropping because we've got Lakina and our grass country is usually pretty strong anyways without any summer cropping. And probably the only other thing we've done, it's more discovered than done, is we started using black box earlier in the year, and just through using some of that and that data, we found that all the cattle we've I think we've got about 3 years worth of data in that now, and using that data, we managed to work out that we buy in a weight range anywhere between 180 kilos to 350 kilos, and our data was telling us that we're making way more money of buying a smaller animal and taking that animal through to say 450 plus. So using that data, we don't generally buy as heavy a sort of background steers as what we used to. We're still verifying that's sort of all pretty new, but it seems to be ringing true with the current market. Like just on the cents per kilo basis, you're not paying much more cents per kilo for a 100 kilo lighter animal. So just on that, it's not really in this market that hard to work out. As long as you can carry him, as long as you can carry that animal, that's probably the trick. But we grass budget pretty diligently, so we don't leave ourselves in a position where we won't be able to carry him through to a decent weight.
It's like your point there, having a tool that will help with data and understanding that in a system, is just becoming so powerful. Like I think, to your point, you wouldn't traditionally think of it that way if you're buying light cattle, like, oh, it doesn't look great on the cents a kilo rate. But when you work it out with a tool like Black Box, and there's others about that can help you make those decisions, it certainly solidifies things and makes your life easier because the numbers traditionally don't lie,
Yeah, that's right. Now, like with Black Box, we try and we're not pioneers, but we try and be early adopters with that sort of thing. But every bit of tech that we sort of go into, we've got to work out how we're going to pay for it. So I couldn't quite figure out how we were going to pay for that to start with, but just some of the insights like that so far have been really beneficial, I think, and probably easily paid for that piece of tech. And so no, it's interesting because we did find in that our younger cattle are putting on just as much. It seems counterintuitive, but they're putting on just as many kilos a day as the ones that are 100 kilos heavier on average. And I still haven't quite figured out why that is, but I'm putting it down to the fact that the period they're upset for when they come into the program, there is a smaller portion of the time they're here when you're buying small ones and they get more settled in to your property and whatnot. But anyway, it's interesting. It's interesting thing to be looking at. But it's sort of probably all going to be verified yet. We'll see over the next couple of years how that all turns out.
Yeah, 100%. And last one to wrap up, views on the outlook. What's your perspective, on markets and whatnot? And are you watching anything shift, change, adjust that you want to keep an eye on? Is there a signal there that you want to see happen or are mindful of?
Well, I'll just defer that question to you, Riff, and you can just tell me. But in all seriousness, we probably look, as long as the weather's with us, I don't see any reasons, given the international markets seem pretty solid. There's obviously little blimps and blips here and there that always affect it. But the fact that the US cattle herd's so low and all those things, and you stack the weather being good on top of that here, I just I don't see under the current circumstances how it can go down too much. The caveat I'd probably put on that is we are now probably looking for when that next dry period's going to be. So we'll start gearing ourselves up for that, because as traders, we probably make better money, when it's a good time to buy than when it's a good time to sell. Like right now, the margin's very good and, we're very profitable at the moment, but a low buy price, is a good indication that you've got a lot of upside. So we're starting to erode that at the moment. But the weather and the fact that there's so many cattle, especially like you say in Queensland, and a lot of those crossbred cattle, it might be 3 or 4 years away, who knows? But there'll be a time where there'll be a lot of cattle on the market. But just making sure we're prepared for that when it happens. And given the fact grain prices going down, we can even look at. We haven't done it for a number of years because grain prices have been so high, but we could grain assist and out in the paddock. And we just do that through pellets, through 2.5 ton feeders. Very simple. We don't have any extra machinery for that. But we'll start looking at things like that if the price of pellets gets down low enough, and we can make our grass go further. But look, I think it's all very positive, Rip, at the moment, and it's just being prepared for whatever comes.
Mate, I couldn't agree more, and I think generally, share your views pretty much word for word in that instance. I've been wrong a lot more times than I've been right this year, but my worry still stands for Queensland if it gets dry. I'm not trying to scaremonger or stress people, but Queensland and northern New South Wales hasn't had an extended period of dry other than 23 for a while, and we're probably due for one, which is what worries me. But I think the demand, what impressed me most this year is the demand on the cattle side, being feedlots and processors, is there, and they're handling the good numbers of stock we're putting through the system. We'll have record grain-fed turn-off and 50-year highs in kill numbers, but we've still seen a really strong rise in the market, at a period throughout the year when you traditionally expect markets to soften, particularly in Queensland. And I think that's a really good indication of the available space processors and feeders now have to deal with these high levels of cattle. And I think that's a great outcome for everyone.
Yeah, no, I agree that processor ends where the bottleneck, like it's getting close to bottleneck now, and we're in a good season, so it's it'll only get worse when those numbers come on. And it could be a long time before that happens, but and that's one of the reasons why we try and have a relationship with a feedlot, so we know when it does come, we can get those numbers out the gate. They got a home because we stuck with them when it was good, and hopefully they'll stick with us when it's not so great. But no, it's we got to enjoy it while it's good, and inevitably prepare for when it's bad. So it's it's all part of the cycle.
Mate, still plenty of positivity, but I think that'll wrap us up. Have I missed anything?
No, I don't think so, Rip. I'm still wondering whether I'm qualified to be on this podcast, but I hope your listeners got something useful out of it, and it was great to be on.
Mate, definitely qualified. I think people will really appreciate your views and your insights, quite considered in what you've shared with us today, and I think a lot of people will appreciate that. So, thanks for joining. We'll have you back on down the track, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Drew. Very good.
Cheers. That was a cracker. If today's episode or any others or anything that Tim's raised has raised a question for you, reach out and send me an email to ripley.atkinson@stonex.com or record a voice memo of yourself on your phone, where you're from and the question, and I'll get to answering it in the next episode. Feel free to share this episode that you've just listened to today with any of your mates. The more people that get some information and insights and different perspectives in their ears or in their pocket as a tool to utilise and reference, I think is a good thing. So share it with other people you know. But thank you for listening today. Until next time, take care. We'll see you then. Cheers.